Hey, podcast listeners. Another Charlie from the future slash past slash present moment. You're getting used to these little preludes as well. So due to our paternity leave, we're actually going to play you an archived episode now. This was a preview episode that the wonderful Neil Patrick Stewart, who's the head of BFA acting at Texas State, agreed to do so I could practice the college interview format. Just so you know, we wouldn't normally double a program so quickly because we already had the wonderful Caitlin Hopkins on from the musical theater program at Texas State. Though I will say we are going to go back and catch some of those acting programs at schools that have both. So a school like Michigan or Texas State where they have a musical theater program and an acting program that is separate. We will try to catch both of those, but I'm going to try to get a little bit more of an array of all the schools in general. But because Neil was kind enough to do this and he was so brilliant, we thought it is worth releasing to all of you to hear. If I sound a little more nervous and unsure of myself than I will be in episodes to come, that's because I am. That's exactly what's happening. It's my first time doing it. Luckily, Neil, I think, was brilliant enough to kind of carry the episode, and it still sounds really good, even though I fumble a little bit as we go. Speaking of paternity leave, I just want to take a second and say thank you to all of you for the immense outpouring of love we have received since announcing our birth. Solvay and Mama are both happy and healthy, and everyone's doing really well. We're just kind of figuring out this new rhythm of life, which is a little different on our end with what is now a 14-day-old baby. If he's 14 years old, then it really does go fast.
Oh, you're really transcending time, Charlie.
That's where we go. Future, past, present. Exactly. Present is the hard one. But also speaking of paternity, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Neil. You won't hear it on the episode because it was before it was official, but he and his lovely wife, Lindsay Lab, who's also a wonderful artist in and of herself, are expecting in a few months. So they're expecting a little baby boy. Okay. Back to the past, future, however it works. I hope you enjoy this preview episode with Neil. Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, co-director of MTCA Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we have a really fun show lined up for you. We recorded this a little while back with one of my good friends and colleagues, Neil Patrick Stewart. I know Neil from the Performing Arts Project, known as TPAP, where he runs the Blueprint program. It's the first of one of their multiple summer programs they offer each summer. I've taught there the last few years, and it is a fantastic program. And kind of fun fact about me and Neil, I don't bring it up in the interview, but a few years ago, I subbed in for him as a teacher. I got to kind of live his whole life. I hung out with his wife, taught all of his classes, and it was a very fun sort of experience of wearing somebody else's shoes in a real way. This episode is another one of our college deep dives where you're going to find a snackable audio tour to get you a view into various great theater programs around the country. Some things we get into with Texas State, we talk about what makes it unique in terms of their costs, very unique and wonderful, their approach, some of the different styles. We talk about what they look for in an audition. You're going to hear the word unconventivity a lot of times, and how much of the audition is about the intangibleness versus how much is about the skill presented. I think it was an interesting discussion there. And then we talk a little bit about equity and the future of virtual auditions. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's get to that interview. All right, I'm here with Neil Patrick Stewart. Neil is a writer, a director, an actor, and a teacher. He has 2 books on the bookshelves of major bookstores. The first one is called Fact, and then a word I will not say on this podcast. And then the next one is Headlines. You like those repeated titles, Neil. Very interesting. Numerous directing credits across the country, numerous acting credits, including a kind of fun fact. He's the former creative director of New York's Backhouse Productions, where he co-directed the first couple years of the lab developing In the Heights with Lin-Manuel and Tommy Kail, our people you may have heard of in this world. He has an MFA from ART and a BA in theater from Wesleyan University. And he teaches at Texas State. He teaches acting, characterization, and improvisation, and is the head of BFA acting. A little bit about Texas State. Texas State is located in San Marcos, Texas. They offer a BA in theater, a BFA in musical theater, a BFA in acting, and then about 10 other BFAs in the theater world. In fact, on their website, you can read their mission statement is to offer a diverse range of degrees in theater, allowing our students to find a program suited to their skills and interests. Neil, how did we do there? Do we cover you in Texas State relatively well?
You're doing great so far. Yeah,
Oh, good.
that's a good
Great.
snapshot.
Well, Neil, let's get a little bit into your own background. I mean, for the most part, we're going to focus on Texas State, but I'd love to, if this is an episode on the College Audition, what's the previously on? How did you find yourself to kind of be in this position?
Well, I have been involved for years and years and years since I was 18 with summer musical theater programs. I sort of grew up in a summer musical theater program, and then over the years started to have a sort of a student leadership role, and then eventually I became something that I've never heard of since, a junior faculty member, and then I became a faculty member, and then when we founded our current summer program, the Performing Arts Project, in the shuffle, I became the associate artistic director. And so it was through these summer programs where I would meet students from all over, from multiple schools and high schools, that I was invited to come to Texas State by Caitlin Hopkins, who's the head of the musical theater program, to do a workshop. And it was right place at the right time. Another faculty member suddenly took a job at Carnegie Mellon and disappeared. And it was late in the year, and they needed a quick replacement. And I put my CV out there, and they hired me for 1 year. And now I'm in my 8th or 9th year. It was just supposed to be a one-time thing, but it just remained.
Feels just like the theater world, right? Sometimes the right place, the right time,
Sure.
There's a lot of luck, but a lot of, what is the talent plus opportunity is skill,
Right.
or something like that. There's some equation there. Let's get into Texas State a bit. I'd love to start kind of in brief.
Yeah.
What do you think it means to be a Texas State student?
Like a Texas State student in general?
No, I mean, sorry, Texas State BFA acting student.
Oh, great. Our students are amazing. I'm incredibly proud of our program and of our student body. We have an exceptionally diverse student body. The students are a majority from Texas, but every class has students from all over the country as well. And one of the neat things about what we do is we offer every student who joins the BFA acting program the in-state tuition at Texas State, and thereby, there is our sort of the feather in our cap, right? Is that our program is super competitive on a national level, but it's cheaper than just about any option. I shouldn't say cheap. It's more affordable than just about any other option that you'd have out there. So it's a really great way to prepare for the business without going into debt. And so I would characterize our actors as smart in the beginning. Yeah. And then I think that the other sort of guiding principle that makes our program feel unique, although I think a lot of other schools are moving in this direction, but we really, really, really try to honor the artist, the actual artist that is living inside these people and coming out of these people, as opposed to trying to change them or make them fit a cookie cutter mold. We encourage, I think more so than other programs, we encourage those secondary and tertiary skills like filmmaking, stage management, writing, directing, because being a multi-hyphenated actor creator is really what the business wants right now. And if a young artist takes initiative when they hit the ground running and makes things happen for themselves, this is the best time for it. This is a golden age, I think, for young artists, with so many platforms out there for producing content and for getting your work out there and getting taken seriously by the business. And so we really try to be modern in that way and help prepare actors for the business now.
I love that. And we'll get into some of those modern questions a bit later too. But I can echo really, from having added Texas State now to a lot of students' lists, both of those facts about the cost is often a huge win because you're fighting against geography. Often students, their goal is not necessarily, I want to go all the way to the southern tip of the country, but that cost is huge for students and parents. And I think that a modern approach of a holistic, look at the actors' personage. I think you guys are really cutting edge in that way. I mean, I don't know if it's the first, but one of the first to offer wellness to your students. And I think that's a huge boon for them. A lot of students will talk about, I want that to be part of this I don't want a competitive environment where I'm feeling like it's cutthroat or any of those kind of things. So I think you guys are really
Yeah.
on the cutting edge there. This may be a little similar of a question, but if you feel like a student spends 4 years at your school, so maybe starts as a freshman, spends 4 years, and then graduate, what's the biggest way you feel like they'd come out changed? So how has Texas State changed the student if they have?
It's hard to control for that and really find out because college is such a transformative experience for everyone
Mm-hmm.
who goes through it, right? So the I mean the transition from living in your parents' house or on their dime and to starting to figure out what kind of artist you want to be and what your values are and what you like to fight for. That changes people fundamentally. And so it's fun to watch that journey and try to create a safe environment for that journey. We really throw the gauntlet down at the feet of our students to form an effective ensemble for all 4 years, even though there will be drama. And this is true everywhere you go, right? They say, don't have any showmances. It happens, right? And so what we try to do from the beginning is recognize, you may have chemistry with everyone and you may not. You may become lifelong best friends with people in your class and you may not. But we do need to be a supportive, caring, resilient ensemble together and grow together. So they leave with those skills and a real sort of network of support of how to collaborate and how to lean on one another, because you have the rest of your life to be totally alone in this business, to feel like nobody cares about you, like the industry could take you or leave you. It can be a really scary feeling when you first graduate. And I think ultimately we really try to help students feel like they have some options and some paths and some plans for themselves when they get out of here. It's a notoriously challenging business to get into, and I think sometimes that it's possible that some training programs might sort of wash their hands of it and be like, we're doing everything we can, and good luck, and you'll make it or you won't, kid. And we work really hard to demystify the things that can be demystified about the industry, to really let students feel like they have access to. They spend their whole senior year, researching the cities they might live, the casting directors and the agents there, and the projects there, and knowing where they meet the market, and practicing interview skills and all sorts of things to help them really feel like they can aim at what they want in this business and go for it and have a shot.
It's so beautifully said, and actually dovetails nicely with our mission statement. We're trying to demystify this daunting audition process.
Yes.
So I think it's really great. I'm going to ask a tough question. Why do you think
Okay.
a student might not choose your school? So if, let's say, I've got a couple options, why do you think you might say, maybe Texas State's not the fit for you?
One of my least favorite reasons, but it's true, is when people are from nearby. Like some great actors from Austin that just, I get it. They want to get away from their parents. They want to go somewhere else. And so sometimes we have a hard time recruiting certain Texas actors just because they want to leave Texas. They've always fantasized about that. And I think another reason is, I don't see ourselves as in competition with NYU. These are two diametrically opposed experiences that you're considering. And so if a student gets into NYU and Texas State, it's a personal thing they have to decide. It's not that one of them is going to be objectively better than the other, but they couldn't be more different. I think some students really, really need to be somewhere safe for a while to train and really develop in that place, but it's not so removed that I think students are surprised at how many folks from New York come down here as guest teachers or, for festivals and things like that. So there is a connection to the industry and to the real world. But it's, in New York, my friends that have gone to Juilliard, casting directors will come to their plays while they're a sophomore.
Totally
and
different.
And that's cool by one metric. And that's really scary and sort of unfair by another metric, because I think it's important to be able to spend some time setting things down and reassembling what you have. We create a really, really, really safe and supportive environment for that.
I love that. I'm going to ask you now for the first time to talk about Texas State as a larger program. Maybe outside of the theater program, if I was going in as a BFA actor, what does Texas State afford a prospective student outside of the theater program, to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, well, it's an enormous university, so I really feel like you get sort of the best of both worlds by being part of this intimate program of about 50 students total in all 4 years, with a lot of attention and a lot of sort of guidance through your 4 years inside this program. But then you're in the context of this much larger university where they have, I still discover new departments or fields of study that Texas State offers that I haven't heard of yet. You can really study so many different things. So that's cool. There's a lot of opportunities in that way. And a lot of our students, even though we're a demanding program, a lot of our students do minor, and every now and then some of them double major. And so a lot of people take advantage of that and, combine media or mass communication with their acting degree or business or dance. And so that's really cool. San Marcos is amazing. I think a lot of people who come to visit the school who don't live in Texas are sort of pleasantly surprised at how pretty the campus is. We have the San Marcos River, which is truly sort of an amazing natural resource. It cuts right through campus, and it's this spring-fed river. So it's something like 100 times cleaner than the FDA requires drinking water to be. You can see all the way to the bottom. It's 72 degrees year-round because it comes from the spring. That's exactly 72 degrees. And so folks tube in it, and it's just this sort of center of this sort of the spirit of San Marcos. And it's a funky, cool town just outside of Austin. It's got a lot of that Austin vibe, that weird vibe. More indie coffee shops and tattoo parlors and you can shake a stick at. But I think it's a good place to go to college in that sense. Some students, they want to get into the Greek life. It's not something that we encourage them to do because, again, the program is a big commitment. But some students, that's really valuable to them to have the opportunity to be part of sort of some of the larger ideas of what college life is like. Going to the big football games, Greek life, or joining the drill team, or the big choirs that come from the music program. There's just lots of ways to get involved, lots of opportunities.
I love that. And I can really attest to my experience of when I went down there, how much it's like Austin. And I think if you are coming from a perception of a Northeast or maybe a California of what you think Texas is going to be like, which I certainly had lived my whole life in the Northeast, it is much more liberal, much more funky. It felt like Brooklyn a lot more than it felt like what I would have thought of as Texas, which was really cool. I'd love to talk a little bit in the acting world about, let's say I was a student who wants to pursue a BFA in acting. I've made that decision, but I maybe come from the musical theater world. Are there any opportunities in terms of collaboration or what musical theater training might I get if I'm an actor and I still have a little foot in that musical theater world?
That's a really good question. And that's sort of like the right profile, I think, for us. I think we have a lot of students in our program who are really invested in acting and acting training, but do have a foot in the musical theater world. I think the recipe for being miserable would be if you truly feel like you are in your soul a musical theater person, and you were to join our program. You may always look at our sister program across the hall, the musical theater program, and always wish you were over there. But I wouldn't recommend that on anyone. And so definitely we have a lot of musical theater achievers in our acting program, which makes me sometimes wonder, do I have a bias towards this or something? But I think that musical theater is so popular at the high school level.
Yes.
And it's hard for students to get really satisfying experiences with, we need a new word for straight theater because I hate calling it straight theater, right? But for non-musicals, sometimes it's hard to have a satisfying experience doing that. And so really college is their first opportunity to really explore the real work in that way. And so our program is perfect for people like that because we are sister programs. So the musical theater program and the acting program, we share master teachers often. We share resources. We put our first years together in the same dorm so that they can become friends and roommates and start relationships that way. All of the productions that we do are open to all university students. So actors can be cast in the musicals. Of course, the musical theater students tend to dominate those cast lists, but actors do get cast in the musicals, and the musical theater students can audition for the plays. And same with all of the performance and production majors, which are 350 of them. We're the second largest theater department in the country, right? So we have this full producing season. But to me, it's great that the whole ecosystem participates in all these productions. And does it make the casting a little bit more competitive? Yes, but I think only in a healthy way. We have so many opportunities that our actors are always turning things down. And so that's useful. Also, Caitlin and the musical theater program are really, really generous in that when they have room in their musical theater dance classes, they fill those out with students of the appropriate level from our acting BFA. That's really handy. There are some students who, the musical theater program at Texas State is known for one voice, Michael Maresca's sort of groundbreaking vocal technique. And so we have acting students that study privately with him. So they pay for that. But there are classes such as singing for the actor, which are taught sort of using the one voice technique, which our actors can audition for and take. And so we do have we have actors in our program who do summer stock every summer, musical theater, and do acting during the year with us. So it's a great place to sort of cobble together your own program in that way.
There's something really beautiful about that, like, messy idea too, because I think it's a little bit of a shock to some students sometimes if you don't have some overlap. That, like, once you get out in the world, nobody cares what's on your degree. That, like, you can lose to an acting student in the professional world if they can sing. Like,
no one's going to say, "Were you an MT?"
Yeah, was that an MT? I'm not hearing MT in the voice. It's like, no, if you can sing and you can dance, you can be in the show. Yeah, so true. Yeah. Anything else about your school that we feel like we missed that you want to brag about that we didn't hit?
Oh man, I mean. There's so many great things. We cover the gambit in terms of our curriculum. We have so much diversity in our student body, but also in our teachers and the approaches that we teach. So we learn a lot of different techniques, and you get access to things that I know you can't get anywhere else, such as Laura Lane teaches the style, which is a technique that comes out of the Actors Gang, a theater company in LA that was founded by Tim Robbins, and folks like Jack Black and others sort of came up through the Actors Gang learning the style. It's this highly physical, like crazy characterization technique that is, you just can't hide. You're naked in that class. Like, you have to grow or else turtle up. And that's amazing. The students get to work on Russian movement technique with me, which is not something that's offered at a lot of universities. We have this amazing film program that's inside the theater department that's growing and growing. It's getting a new building next year. And the faculty members in that program are these like award-winning killer indie film directors here in Texas. And so the film program is growing like gangbusters, and our students are appearing on film more and more. So it's just a really exciting place to come to school right now.
I love that answer. Let's get a little bit into the audition now. So I have a couple questions kind of about your audition process as a prospective student who might be auditioning. Give me just a short, maybe a couple words of what do you think in general makes a good audition for Texas State?
I've noticed that we have a trend towards unconventionality. Is that a word? Unconventionalism? Unconventivity? You'll fix that in post.
No, yeah. Unconventivity is what it was. I'm glad that you got there. You were right there.
Yeah. We tend to love students who, regardless of how much acting technique they've learned, because we can teach them that, seem to know themselves and to be unique, and can be present, even if they're introverted, even if they are nervous. That can be present with their nerves or with their introversion, so that we have access to them and we can get to know them in that short amount of time. Students, and I tend to favor nerds, like people that are nerds about acting, that or want to be nerds, that want to get into it, and like their idea of a good time is to sit around and read a Shakespeare play out loud together. We're looking for people who are gamers who want to come and get to work, because the mantra of our program is the joy is in the work. If you can learn to enjoy the work, you can be happy doing this for the rest of your life.
That's so true. A student's favorite question: is there anything you definitely do not want to see in a student's audition? Any stayaways?
Well, I'll tell you, like, what personally irks me.
Yes, please.
And like I should just disclaim this with, I feel that we do a really great job of creating a safe and welcoming audition environment.
Uh-huh.
I get so frustrated with schools that still are stuck in sort of the old school of folding their arms, leaning back, and just sort of wanting you to professionally dazzle them, or they're quietly judging your audition technique. I would rather spend some time getting to know them so that by the end they really are closest to doing their best work or being their most present. I don't need them to automatically be good at that. I just need them to be able to arrive at that with me in the room. A thing that bothers me are they're pretty cliche, but it's just true. If I ask them about the given circumstances or the context, and they haven't read the play or they don't know, that's frustrating. You want to come to acting school for 4 years and really dig into this, and you couldn't be bothered to read the play that your monologue is from, even if they're recontexting it, right? I don't have a problem with them recontexting it. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
I do. Maybe to help Meghan out and our listeners. Yeah.
If the character, like we might normally say, don't play a character who's 55 and a grandfather, because you would have a hard time relating to that. But if the student were to say, but I loved this text, and I thought it would really work on an 18-year-old kid who has an old soul, and so that's what I'm imagining, I think that's great. That's cool. The other thing that really bothers me is, and I keep waiting for one of these people to like show up at my door and punch me in the nose, but monologues by Gabriel Davis, Wade Bradford, Kelly Diamond, Joseph Arnaud, they're funny writers. They're funny. But when we're laughing at them, we're laughing at their witty writing. And they write these one-off monologues that have no larger context. And so the monologues sort of become one-trick ponies. And I'm trying to stay objective and open-minded, but when I see a student who does one of these sort of one-trick pony monologues, I feel like this person doesn't read plays. This person found this by Googling funny monologues. And it makes me feel like they're not as serious. That being said, like, we love a monologue from a Netflix show. We love a monologue from from Reddit, comments. We love creativity in that way. And it seems like it's sort of the anti-creativity to do sort of a book monologue, just because it's, witty writing. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing, I think that we're turned off by over formality. People who wear like their church clothes to audition and or feel stiff. We just really trying to get to know people in a short amount of time, and so the closer you can be to yourself, the better.
I'd love to ask you a bit about and here maybe specifically as a BFA acting, what has your relationship been with pre-screens? Something you've explored, something that you are using? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we do pre-screens on Get Accepted. So we ask students to submit via Get Accepted. There are some ways to sort of skip that if we go to any events that year. If we go to Chicago Unifieds or the North Texas Drama Auditions or Moonifieds or any other sort of unified thing, people can sort of skip that process. But yeah, we use Get Accepted, and we look at materials on there, and then we will invite folks to our callbacks.
And then is there any different advice, or so any of the answers that you had before, would they change for a pre-screen audition? Is there anything kind of different you'd want to see in a pre-screen?
What we don't see enough of is using the frame or the camera, using the space. It's, again, it shouldn't take over, it's the work that you're doing is the most important thing. And so if it gets you in your head to change it up too much, you'll still shine just by doing your work. But I think that there are opportunities to use proximity or distance, or I think there's something about the X in the audition room or the webcam or the camera in the filmed audition that gets people to feel stuck and be a little bit still and fall into sort of a talking head scenario. And we really favor actors that are in their bodies or are interested in using their body.
It's so interesting this year as, pre-screens took on a different kind of weight in the pandemic. As different schools would sort of allude to that, or sometimes even require that, it would like freak our students out. They would go, "Oh God, I have to do what for this school? Are they asking me in a weird location? Or they're asking me to?" sometimes like, they're asking me to be creative. Like, you're artists. Like, let's go be creative now.
Yeah.
Like, that's, if that's their only audition, this is their chance to see that creativity.
Yeah, my favorite part about the pre-screens are the slates, because we ask them every year. We'll ask them one or two sort of interesting or off the beaten path questions. So this year it was tell us an artist under 40 that you love and respect, and why. And I just love that. So many of us who watch thousands and thousands of monologues a year. I honestly feel like I can get what I need sometimes from 10 seconds of your monologue, and then I'll watch your slate 5 times to get a sense of who you are. I'm going to spend time with you for 4 years, right? Like, what is it? What's your vibe? And so that's really nice. And when folks have clearly sort of scripted and canned those answers, that sucks, because once again, it feels like we're not getting to know you. Like, I almost wish, maybe we'll try it next year, where they have to open the question on camera and then answer it.
A big reveal, yeah. Get into the technology.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I have a weird question for you.
Yes.
If you had to estimate, and you can estimate however you want, a number or percentage or whatever, how much of the decision of a kid being accepted or not is based on the skill displayed in their monologue work versus what I'll call the intangibles, the interview, the adjustments, how they walk in the room if it's a live audition? How much weight are you putting on sort of skill displayed as an actor in the work versus how much on those intangibles?
In truth, it's sort of, I feel like we sort of accept some students with one metric and some students with another, because it's all about balance, right? But we do try to include a couple of students in each year's class that don't have a lot of craft yet, but just feel like pure potential. And we tend to have a couple students whose resumes are like longer than mine, and it's like 8-point font. I'm like, how have you done so many plays when you're 18? I don't understand. And so the truth is, I think it's like 80% the intangibles. I think there's a certain like level of, can you speak out loud? Do you have a sense of what the job is as an actor? You know what I mean? That you have to sort of a bar that you have to clear of sort of basic competence. But most students who are auditioning for acting programs have that. Not all, but most have that. And then from there, it's a million other intangible things. Because the truth is, we're in an incredibly like unfair privileged position. We folks that are accepting students for a college program, because we just have more supply than we could ever. So every year I'm turning away great actors, great people. Like, we just don't have the numbers. Like, we just can't take 45 people. And I hate that part of the job, because I would hate for someone to get a no thank you from us and take that as like a lesson or a sign. It's just not true. There are so many great students that we say no to, just because we can really like focus on other things that a student can't necessarily control. So you could do your best and you could be great, and you still might not get in.
So true. And I think it's one of the big lessons people learn in this process is that it's not so personal as all that. If I spent 10 minutes with you, it's not the holistic rejection of you as a human being just because you're not getting into the school.
Exactly.
It's really hard, though. I mean, it's easy to say that having gone through the business and taken so much rejection. It's like, it's not easy at 17 when you have been the lead in all of your high school musicals and you don't know anything else. It's a really difficult process.
Yeah.
If I could add in, what do you think, what percentage, you don't have to add it into the 80-20, but how much percentage do you feel like lives in the academics for you guys in terms of if the student, you like them artistically, what kind of threshold do they have to hit academically for the school or not in terms of getting into the school?
I sort of struggle with what that should be. It's something that I've sort of actively like analyzing in real time, because I think that we might have, I feel like I'm detecting that we have a little bit of a bias towards academic achievement. And I wonder if that's unfair, just because acting is not an academic pursuit. That being said, it's a liberal arts school. So it's not a conservatory program. It's a conservatory style program in the context of a liberal arts university. And so you have to get by. You have to succeed. That said, we've had students get rejected by the university academically that we have fought for, with what we call a special talent waiver, and gotten them accepted. But it's a taller order. We're taking on more if we have to help you find the tutoring and help you sort of stay on the ball. Um, the other reason why academic achieving helps is if you get a scholarship from the university, that gives you in-state tuition. And so if we have a very limited amount of scholarship dollars that we can offer because we're so affordable, we're not like a big money university. If you manage to get a scholarship, that means I can offer to you for free. I don't have to pay money to give you the in-state tuition. So that helps out-of-state students when they are academic achievers.
That totally makes sense. And I think it's confusing for students who are looking at this process for the first time to kind of understand that conservatory liberal arts, sort of the BFA spectrum of, especially those BFA liberal arts schools can run a really large gamut of how academic, how not, in terms of the admittance. It's
right.
difficult to see from the outside, but of course from inside, you're like, well, this is how our school works. And it's always a little different.
Yeah.
Okay. I had one more question for you, which is just you hit on this a little bit in terms of the challenges of 2021 specifically, both in terms of, we can talk a little bit about racial equity, but then also kind of the demands of this virtual world that we just all stepped into. I'd love to kind of hear about how is Texas State approaching, sort of being prepared to meet this moment. How have you changed maybe in the last number of years, and where do you kind of see yourself going as you keep trying to meet the moments that are coming?
I mean, it's the work is going to be nonstop for a while. We have a lot of things that we're doing well already. Texas State in general is an Hispanic serving institution, right? So there's Texas State is something like 40% Latinx, and our theater department matches that number. Our acting area, our acting students are really, really diverse, and I'm really, really proud of that. We have something like 45% BIPOC students, and which is really great. It can be tricky in recruiting because just in general, students who are of color can just be a demographic that's more in demand. In particular, male-identified Black actors. We really are having to innovate and try to come up with new ways to recruit because it can be really hard to find those students, and many of them will get frustrated because many of them will get offered full rides at other universities, and we can't do something like that. So we're having to be more and more innovative with how we recruit. We have some creative ways in which we do that. We've recruited actors in the past out of the population of the university. So we've discovered actors in college and then pulled them into our program, which helps us maintain diversity and reach out. But there's more. There's so much more for us to do. The whole department is focusing on anti-racist training and practices right now and decolonizing the classroom. One of the coolest things that happens at Texas State every single year is the Black and Latino Playwrights Conference. That's in the first couple of weeks of school every single year. And we honor a legend every single time. Some amazing writers have come through. But also we develop new work submitted from all over the country by playwrights of color. And we bring in professional directors and some of our current students' work and some professional actors, and we create this opportunity to sort of celebrate the work. And as our artistic director of BLPC, Eugene Lee, says, to level the playing field and to add to the canon and help the students get exposed to more voices than just a lot of plays by old dead white people. So we're at work. There's always more to do. The other thing that I think that is a real feather in the cap of Texas State in that way is the affordability. We have a huge amount of first generation college students, which is really cool. And we have a lot of students in our program who, by breaking their backs, unfortunately, are putting themselves through the program. They're working their tails off over the summer. They're picking up a ton of shifts when they're not in rehearsal, and they're managing to pay their way through college. And that kind of resilience and initiative is something that's going to serve them in the business.
So true. And it's a form of equity, and not just racial equity, but it's a form of equity you have offered for a long period of time, where some of these schools are just out of a price range that is affordable for anyone. I recently had a student, I won't say their name, who was offered $71,000 from a university, and had to keep negotiating because I was like, how much higher is it going to go? Like, it's just the schools are so insane. I mean, just the costs can get so insane.
If we offered them $71,000, it would mean that when they graduate, we pay them.
Yeah, that's for all 4 years. This was per year. This was $71,000 a year. Let's be clear. We didn't really talk about the demands of the virtual world. In terms of, I just love to hear, certainly in terms of how your students are going to be prepared. It would be great. But also, if you want to talk a little bit about, do you have a sense from auditioning this year and how auditions might continue in the pandemic, Zoom or not Zoom world?
Yeah, well, speaking of equity, I think one of the like silver linings, or one of the things that we learned from having to do an audition season online, is that is a great way to level the playing field. Not everyone can afford to fly into one of our on-campus audition days, and so I think that we're going to be interested in having at least one callback process that's virtual, ongoing in the future, so that we can give more access to people who want to consider the school. I know that we'll be very, very happy to be back in person in the fall. I think that we have really mined what's possible to work online. But that being said, students are definitely taking advantage of this moment to, we focus a lot on self-taping and on online presence, and even talk about social media and things like that in our program. And so they've had the opportunity to practice in that way, because these days, I talk to my friends in LA, and even the ones that are local in LA, that the networks don't want you to come in anymore. They want you to put yourself on tape. Like, that's just the way it is now.
In some ways, the way it has been. I mean, really, the pandemic is forcing you to catch up to the way the industry was going. For small things,
right?
Most of the time, it would be put yourself on tape. That's just what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Any final thoughts? Anything else that we missed that we would really want to cover in a snack of Texas State?
A snack of Texas
Give me a little bite.
I am a stress ball right now because I'm still assembling our class of 2025. And it's April 13th right now. Normally, we feel like we're coming to a close at this point. But I think COVID has really changed a lot of things. We have a lot of open offers and a lot of students sitting on those offers and not making decisions, which is frustrating. But at the same time, I believe in giving them the time to take their time. But one thing I find myself saying, to these students when I talk to them a lot is, it's not that there's one correct decision that you have to figure out, or else you'll be miserable in every other path. The truth is, with these really talented students that have offers from multiple schools and they're attracted to more than one school, it means that probably that any of those you'd be fine. Yep. You'd be just fine. And so you can choose. You don't have to add extra weight to the decision. You can choose based on something that feels trivial, or something that feels like one little piece, or just based on your gut, even though you can't identify it. And that's okay. That you will be fine. With the talent that you have and the interest that you have and the drive, you can make multiple paths work. It's going to be stressful either way, so you can't say don't stress, but you'll be okay. You can make a decision.
It's so true. I just was saying this to our students on a recent webinar of like, this is not. It is in some ways, of course, it may be a sweatshirt that you keep in your closet for 20 years, but it is not a life-defining, altering decision of whether you'll be successful or not, no matter what school you got into or didn't get into. I think people sometimes want to define themselves. I didn't get into X school. That means I'm not an X kind of actor. So it means by the time you're 30, you're going to be such a different actor at that point. It is not going to define everything about your life.
Yeah, and and there's always grad school. I got a general theater degree and then went to a conservatory later. And I think, that I was all the stronger for having taken 5 years in between. And I really knew what I was trying to do when I was getting my MFA. And so, yeah, college didn't define me at all.
It's so true. I mean, it's right now to a student who's 17, 18, it feels like the final step of a process. And really, it's just the first step. It's the first step on maybe it's a second step if you've been doing a lot of training in high school, but it's just one more step on your training journey that's hopefully continuing for the next 50 years. Neil, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that interview with Neil. I just wanted to get a little bit into, for those of you who maybe are starting your college audition journey, a little deeper dive on that BFA liberal arts discussion. Neil was kind of outlining beautifully the tension that they sometimes feel between what is the conservatory environment within a liberal arts university Again, I think it is helpful for those, if you haven't sort of begun your list construction, to look at schools and sort of see where do they fall on that spectrum from a BFA conservatory, maybe a conservatory program that's not associated with the university at all or very loosely affiliated, versus a BFA program that's within a liberal arts university, which can span all the way from still pretty loosely affiliated, still mostly conservatory style, all the way to a real 50-50 mix of liberal arts and conservatory style training, all the way to an audition-based BA where you'll just kind of major in theater. That can happen, or even maybe on the far end of the spectrum, which is be a non-audition program where you can still major in theater. So all the different ways you can explore theater as a college major, but on a large spectrum where it can be very different. In Texas State, falling somewhere on that third quartile in the BFA liberal arts category. And that's where we were talking about, could you get a minor? Could you get a double major? Is there going to be Greek life? A little bit more likely at those liberal arts universities, even if there's a conservatory style. Well, if you enjoyed that preview episode with Neil and you want to hear some more, please hit that follow button. We'd also love it if you were to rate and review us wherever you found us. I suggest 5 stars if you're also having a baby yourself, and maybe an ironic 5 stars if you were once a baby yourself. You can also reach out to us with questions for the pod at mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com. And if you're interested in working with MTCA for help with your individual prep for your college audition journey, please check us out at mtcollegeauditions.com. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, never lose that unconventiontivity. We'll see you next week.